Hello, everybody. Elvis Presley here. No, I did not end up working at a Burger King in Memphis or on a loading dock at Modesto. I'm here at Renton Technical College facilitating economics. Thank you very much. And what we're going to do on this recording is it's kind of a follow-up to the last one we made because I didn't get everything talked about that I wanted to in terms of letting you know things that you need to know about aggregate demand. So I thought we'd make kind of a B recording to the last one. And so let's talk about it. Now, remember that I had mentioned before that aggregate demand was the relationship between the average level of prices, or the, as I have here, the implicit price deflator, and the level of real GDP. And aggregate demand, of course, is the purchasing of the GDP that is made. And that level of purchasing depends, logically, almost obviously, on the level of prices, okay? So we did say also that unlike the micro demand curves of each product, there is no one price that goes down or up and makes the quantity purchased increase or decrease, okay? But because this is the aggregate, this is the adding of every demand curve, and there's no income effect where lower prices make you buy more of every other thing, because this is everything. And there is no substitution effect because when you're talking about everything, you don't, by definition, have substitutes. So what we're saying is that when average prices go down, the level of real GDP tends to go up. Now, there's specific reasons for that. And remember that GDP, the components, are defined as consumption plus net investment. And this is replenishing your stock of capital or things that make other things, plus government expenditures, plus net exports, okay? And there's several effects that make this relationship. When the price goes down, GDP goes up. And as long as we're just talking about these things, again, like the situation in all economic curves, if we're talking about just the subjects or the titles of the axes, it's just a movement along a curve. So there's several effects that make this relationship constant, basically, or work. And the first one is what we call the wealth effect. That mostly affects consumption, but it also will affect investment to a certain extent. And what that means is that as price levels go down, your purchasing power goes up, so there's less incentive to hold on to a nest egg or wealth like that we, wealth, some examples of it are T-bills, savings accounts, certificates of deposit, stocks, bonds, that sort of thing. So it's more, you're more likely to spend it while the prices are low rather than to hang on to it when the prices might go up, okay? So we have the wealth component here. And also we have the interest effect. Now the interest effect will primarily affect investment, but it also will affect, to a certain extent, consumption. Now what does that mean? Well, suffice it to say, and I was maybe a little more, I gave you a preview of what we're going to be talking about in detail in the next few weeks. But for right now, let's just say that when the price level goes down, interest rates go down, making the cost of investment cheaper, okay? Because investment basically, again, is net replenishing the stock of capital, which are things that make other things. So when prices are lower, interest rates are lower, companies are more apt to invest in new equipment and things that make other things. There is no government effect per se. That's a little different bird there. And there's another effect, the export effect, which basically means what that does basically, like you would think, it tends to impact exports. And what that means is that when price levels go down, it makes United States products more affordable to foreign buyers and makes foreign products more expensive to us. So the net exports tend to go up, even though it's still negative. But anyway, so those things together will make GDP go up as price levels go down. Again, if we're just talking about the relationship between the price index and GDP, it's a movement along a curve. Well, what happens if we don't talk about just the price levels? We talk about something else. Okay, let's say, for instance, let's say the government increases Social Security and increases unemployment insurance. I don't think they're going to do that. But let's say they do that. So what happens? Well, at every price level, you know, for instance, Social Security, us wealthy seniors will have more to blow on things rather than food and clothing and crafts dinners and things like that. So at every price level then, say if it's at that price level, GDP is going, more GDP at that price level will be produced. And so on. At that price level, maybe more will be produced. So, in essence, aggregate demand will move out when that happens. Same with the interest rates. If the interest rates go down, and we're not just talking about going down because of the price levels, say if the Fed, and we're going to talk about how that works in a little bit, say the Fed decides to ease credit or lower interest rates, and they do that by money supply, but we'll in other ways, but we'll talk about that later. Well, the same thing will happen, that at every price level, GDP will be more. So you will have the aggregate demand curve moving out. Okay? And just the opposite. If the Fed decides to tighten credit or increase interest rates, okay, the aggregate demand will move in the other direction because at every price level, less GDP will be produced. Okay, so that is the difference again between the movement along the aggregate demand curve and the curve moving. If we're just talking about the independent price deflator and GDP, old Ceteris is doing his job there. But if we talk about each of the components individually, like if we say GDP, you know, equals consumption plus net investment plus government plus net. If we talk about these things individually, it will make the curve shift. Like for instance, if government spending increases, it'll move out the aggregate demand curve. If government spending decreases, it will move back the aggregate demand curve. So that's what I wanted to say about aggregate demand, but of course, this begs the question, what about supply? We know that it goes together with demand, and we'll be talking about that next time. So stay tuned. Thank you very much.